أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Surah Al-KAHF from verse 65 to 70 inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فوجد عبدا من عبادنا آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما. Allah Ta'ala says that Musa alayhi salam with his student, he's traveling and he comes across and he meets one of his servants. So Abdam min ibadina means that one of the servants of Allah from many servants. So we all are basically indebted to Allah. We are all like slaves of Allah, and He's our Rabb. And He says, just one of my people, one of my creations and one of my followers, He meets them. آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما. And to this person whom Musa alayhi salam has met, Allah Ta'ala has bestowed upon him a special grace and imparted a knowledge from Himself. Now, the person, as I mentioned earlier, is not named in the Quran, but Hadith gives him the title of Khidr. And this person, they found there is more detail in the Ahadith, especially the Ahadith mentioned by Ubay ibn Ka'b and some Ahadith mentioned by Ibn Abbas about how the meeting takes place. So Musa alayhi salam, after retracing his steps, comes back to the point where he and his student, they have lost the fish. And he sees this man sitting there, and he goes to this man, and according to Hadith, Musa alayhi salam says to him, Assalamu alaikum. And the person, he turns to Musa alayhi salam, and he says something like, Wa anna bi ardika salam? Is this how people say salam in your land? Now this is very important hint in the Hadith that the Khidr does not belong to the same country, to the same land where Musa alayhi salam comes from. And also, Khidr, as I mentioned earlier, is a prophet of Allah, because everything indicates that Allah Ta'ala is in direct contact with him. Allah Ta'ala later on we see gives him direct directions to take a human being's life. So Allah Ta'ala only talks directly to prophets. So He talks to Musa alayhi salam, Ibrahim alayhi salam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know from the Quran that nowhere does Allah Ta'ala directly communicate to an ordinary human being. And secondly, most importantly, Allah Ta'ala never ever gives direction to an ordinary human being to take another human being's life, what is known as qatal. And in Quran you can see that Ibrahim alayhi salam is asked to slaughter his son. Now that is a direct order from Allah, and he's a prophet. Musa alayhi salam is asked to punish the people who started worshipping the calf, direct order from Allah to a prophet. And here later we see that Khidr alayhi salam is also asked to take a human life, direct orders from Allah. And direct orders for qital only come to prophets. So when Hazrat Khidr alayhi salam says to Musa, Wa anna bi ardika salam, is that how they do salam in your land? Musa alayhi salam realizes that he has not introduced himself. So he says to Khidr alayhi salam, according to the Hadith, Ana Musa, I am Musa. And Khidr alayhi salam, according to Hadith, he says to him, asks him, Musa Bani Israel? Musa from Bani Israel? Again an indication that Khidr alayhi salam comes from a different race. He's not from Bani Israel. So he comes from a different land and he comes from a different race. And as Quran says, Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran that Allah Ta'ala only sends a prophet to a race which speaks their own language. So he is a prophet to another race and another land. And I would also assume that he is older than Musa alayhi salam, because the way he talks to Musa alayhi salam is as a senior would talk to a junior. And another reason for believing that he's a prophet is that only a prophet can talk to another prophet like that, especially an older prophet. Because if you read the Quran, it's very clearly said when people talk to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that you have to talk to him differently as you talk to ordinary people. You cannot address him the same way as you address the ordinary people, or you will lose all of your good deeds. So an ordinary person would not talk to a prophet the way Khidr al-Islam is talking to Musa al-Islam. And he's also going to be his teacher. And the only appropriate thing is that a prophet would teach another prophet, not an ordinary person. So Musa al-Islam says, yes, I'm Musa from Bani Israel. And then, after that, according to Hadith and Quran, Musa al-Islam asks a very direct question. He says, قال له موسى هل أتبعك على أن تعلمني مما علمت رشدا. So he says to him, Musa says to him, may I follow you on the understanding that you will impart to me something of the knowledge, the righteous knowledge that has been given to you by Allah, which has been imparted to you. And it's a very direct question. And in return, Khidr al-Islam, he says, قال, he says, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. He says, behold, you will not be able to have patience with me. Now, why does he say you won't not be able to have patience with me? And the reason comes, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. And how can you be patient about something that you cannot comprehend within the experience you have, within the encompass of your experience? So, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ, and how could you be patient? عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. Tuhit is ahata, encircling. So how could you be patient about something which is beyond your understanding, beyond your comprehension? Because the things which I have, the knowledge I have, they are beyond your comprehension. And in Hadith, Khidr says to Musa al-Islam that I have been given knowledge by Allah which you do not have. As you have been given some knowledge by Allah which I do not have, like the Torah, the ilham and the wahi which is coming from Allah. Khidr doesn't have that. So he says to him that the knowledge I have, you don't have, the knowledge you have, I don't have. Now, two things to understand here which are very important. First of all, sabr. Sabr does not mean giving up or staying quiet. Sabr means to have control over your feelings and to be persevere. So you stand firm, you do not sway, you control your feelings, and you are not giving up. That is the Islamic concept of sabr. And he said that you won't be able to hold your emotions because this is something beyond your comprehension. And this is the second thing which Allah Ta'ala is teaching here through Khidr al-Islam, that all human beings, we have limited comprehension. We do not know everything, and we cannot know everything because many things are beyond our intellect and beyond our understanding and beyond our ability to see, hear, and understand. For example, very simple, we see light, but we see between a very limited spectrum of light from red and violet. We cannot see ultraviolet light. There are other creatures who can, animals that can. We cannot see infrared, which we call a heat. But to other creatures, infrared is a visible color, and there might be hundreds of more colors of light in the infrared spectrum and in the ultraviolet spectrum. But because we can't perceive them, we do not know them, and we can't even name those colors. So knowing your limitations is very important. So Ala ma lam tuhit bihi khubra is very important message from Quran and from Khidr, that you cannot comprehend and cannot be patient and you cannot persevere on things which are beyond your comprehension. And that is where the human beings, we get agitated. So whenever we get agitated, whenever we get frustrated with things happening around us, we have to understand that maybe this is beyond our comprehension. And what does Musa al-Islam say? Musa al-Islam says, قَالَ سَتَجِدْنِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ صَابِرًا وَلَا أَعْصِي لَكَ أَمْرًا. So Musa al-Islam says, you will find me patient if God so wills, and I shall not disobey you in anything. Now, very interestingly, Musa al-Islam uses the word insha'Allah here. Whereas previously, when he was traveling and he started his journey, he said to his student, وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِفَتَاهُ لَا أَبْرَحُ حَتَّى أَبْلَغَ مَجْمَعَ الْبَحْرَيْنِ أَوْ أَمْضِيَ حُقْبًا. that I'm going to continue to travel till we reach the junction of the two seas, even if it takes decades. He did not say inshallah. And when he did not say inshallah, what happened was they missed their target. They went above their target and they had to retrace their steps. So now he's very careful. Now when he's making a commitment, he says, قَالَ سَتَجِدْنِي إِنْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ صَابِرًا وَلَا أَعْصِي لَكَ أَمْرًا. And if you read Surah Al-KAHF, previous ayah, if you go to ayah number 23 and 24, Allah Ta'ala has mentioned there, وَلَا تَكُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا. Behold, beware, never say about anything that I shall do this tomorrow. إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. Except saying, أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ, if Allah will so. وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ إِذَا نَسِيتَ. And call your sustainer your Rabb if you forget about it and if you become aware of it later on. So Musa al-Islam is following that advice. He forgot to say inshallah before, and now he is making sure he says inshallah. And then Khidr al-Islam puts in a condition. Qala, says Khidr al-Islam, فَإِنِ اتَّبَعْتَنِي فَلَا تَسْأَلْنِي عَنْ شَيْءٍ حَتَّى أُحْدِثَ لَكَ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا. So he says, Qala, he says, فَإِنِ اتَّبَعْتَنِي, if you are to follow me, if you are to do following for me and learn from me, فَلَا تَسْأَلْنِي, do not ask a question, عَنْ شَيْءٍ, about anything. So you're not going to ask a question about anything. You're not going to question anything. حَتَّى أُحْدِثَ لَكَ مِنْهُ ذِكْرًا, until I myself give you an account of it. So this is a condition Khidr al-Islam has put for Musa al-Islam. And according to hadith, after this, Khidr al-Islam and Musa al-Islam, they travel, and at that point they come across the water, and there's a ship which is ferrying people from one end of the sea to the other. And the people, they recognize Khidr al-Islam, and he hails them and he asks them to come aboard. So they let him aboard and they don't charge him anything. So when they sit down, there's another thing according to hadith which Khidr al-Islam imparts to Musa al-Islam to emphasize the message he's given earlier. When they sit down, a bird comes, and that bird is a sparrow according to the hadith. It comes and it sits at the leading edge of the ship, of the boat, and it dips its beak once or twice into the water and drinks water from there. And at that point, Khidr al-Islam points out to Musa al-Islam and says that your knowledge and my knowledge is like this bird is taking small sips of water from the sea. And the sea, the ocean, the whole body of water all over the world, they're all connected. That is like the knowledge of Allah. And when we take knowledge from the knowledge of Allah, it does not diminish his knowledge at all. So he's telling Musa al-Islam that whatever we know is very limited. There's a lot of knowledge which Allah has, and human beings, the capacity is very small, like the capacity of the sparrow to take water from the sea or from the river. It's very limited. So he is explaining to him that our capacity to take knowledge is limited. And Allah Ta'ala only imparts to us what we can comprehend and what we can understand and keep in our mind. And he does not give all kind of knowledge to all people. And it says in the Quran, وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ إِلْمِهِ إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ. And nobody can encompass, nobody can make a hata, or nobody can have a total knowledge. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنْ إِلْمِهِ, of anything from the knowledge of Allah. إِلَّا بِمَا شَاءَ, except how much Allah can give to him. And the example Khidr is giving to Musa al-Islam is very beautiful. He says, look at this ocean. This is like the knowledge of Allah. And when the bird is taking some water in her beak, she is not making any deficiency or any kind of decrement in the knowledge of Allah. And it's true, because while the bird is putting her beak in and taking one or two sips of water, there are like thousands and millions of tons of water being added to the sea from rivers, from streams, from rainfall. So the knowledge of Allah is ever expanding. And that knowledge is expanding with the expansion of the universe, with the expansion of his creations. He's creating more and more. The universe is expanding and new things are being formed and new things are happening. So the information and knowledge of Allah is also increasing every day by day, no matter how much we try to take from it. Firstly, we cannot take more than what we can accommodate in our minds. And secondly, we can never encompass it because it's ever increasing and we have a very limited capacity. So inshallah, tomorrow we talk about the journeys of Musa alayhi salam with Khidr alayhi salam and how they impacted on Musa alayhi salam and his psychology when he saw those things happening, why he questioned and how he lost his patience. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll discuss it tomorrow. Jazakallah khair.